Hello friends, to support me and for more stories like this, you can subscribe to my channel and like my videos. My name is Daniel Levi. I am an infantry soldier serving in the Israeli army. The reason I am telling this story is simple, because it is impossible to forget what happened Kolgu inus night. And sometimes I think, maybe we weren't alone that night. In the summer of 2028, the war with Iran had already been going on for months. Tension along the borders was increasing every day. The sounds of missiles, drones, and artillery had already become common for us. But the thing that scares a person most in war is not the sound of shells. It is the silence, especially in the desert. Our unit was stationed in the ruins of an old military base near the Iranian border. The base had been abandoned long ago. Half of the buildings were destroyed, their walls full of bullet holes. Our commander said it was strategically suitable, but the local guides had told us something else. One of them pointed to the base and said in a quiet voice, "This place is not good." At first we thought it was just the fear of war, but then that man added, "Voices are heard at night." One of the soldiers asked, laughing, "What voices?" The man went silent for a moment, then he whispered, "Non-human voices." We all laughed. People invent many things in war, but the fear I saw in that man's eyes, it was so real. Our first night at the base was quite peaceful. We set up our tents, checked our weapons, and a rotating guard system was established. My watch time was 02:00 a.m. Night in the desert is strange. The air, which is scorching hot during the day, suddenly turns ice cold, and the sky becomes incredibly clear. It was like that night too. The stars looked as if they were hanging right above our heads. My guard post was on the edge of the base. In front of me stretched the endless desert. For a while, everything was normal. Then I heard something strange. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then the sound came again. A muffled whisper coming from afar, as if someone was talking from a great distance. I checked the radio. There was no signal. I looked at the desert. No one was there, but the whispering continued. After a few seconds, the sound stopped. I just dismissed it as fatigue. In war, a person's brain sometimes plays games. During breakfast, I told this to my friend Yaron. Yaron was the most cheerful man in our unit. He said, laughing, "Maybe they are desert spirits." Other soldiers also started joking, but then someone else sitting at the table spoke. His name was Aiton. He said in a quiet voice, "I heard it too." Everyone went silent. I was on guard at 3 in the morning. There were sounds coming from the desert. Our commander got angry at this. "Stop talking about such nonsense." But Aiton looked serious. That sound was not a human voice. Strange events continued that night. It was about 03:40 a.m. The electricity in the entire base suddenly went out. The generators weren't working. Radio communication was also cut off. Our commander thought it was a technical problem, but then something strange happened. In the middle of the desert in the distance, we saw something, shadows moving in the darkness. At first, we thought they were enemy soldiers. We all took our weapons, but the shadows moved in a strange way. They weren't walking. They were sliding as if. The commander looked through his binoculars. Then a strange expression appeared on his face. "I don't see humans." The shadows disappeared a few seconds later, as if they had never existed. After that night, strange things started happening in the unit. One soldier said someone was packing behind the tent at night. Another said he heard his own name in the dark. But the strangest event happened on the third night. Aiton didn't return from his watch. At first, we thought he had just changed his post, but we called him on the radio. No answer came. The commander sent 2 people to search for him. They returned about 20 minutes later. Their faces were white as sheets. "We found a body." We were all in shock. Aiton was lying in the desert about 200 meters away from the base, but it wasn't a bullet that killed him. There was an expression of horror on his face, and there were strange marks on his body, as if someone had scratched him with their claws, but there were no tracks around, no footprints, no signs of a struggle, just a corpse lying in the middle of the desert. I was on guard again that night, and then I saw the scariest thing of my life. In the middle of the desert, in the darkness, a figure was standing. It looked like a human, but it was very tall, and its head was bent in a strange way. I raised my weapon. "Halt!" The figure didn't move. Then the wind blew, and that figure slowly raised its head. At that moment, it felt like my heart would stop, because that thing's face was not a human face. And at that moment, I heard a voice right by my ear, a whisper. It was very close. I could even feel its breath. The voice said, "You must leave here." Then it added, "Because he has already awakened." I didn't tell anyone about the whisper I heard night. At least, not right away. Because in war, soldiers are already under enough stress. If I said someone spoke right in my ear, everyone would either mock me or think I'd lost my mind. But after that night, sleep became difficult. While lying in the tent, I kept thinking about the same thing, that voice. "You must leave here." And even worse, "He has already awakened." By morning, the entire unit was shaken by Aiton's death. The official report stated it was a wild animal attack. But we all knew that was impossible, because in that part of the desert, there were no such animals. And the marks on Aiton's body, they weren't normal. It was as if they weren't made by claws, but by something long and thin, like human fingers. That afternoon, our commander gathered us. "Tonight, everyone will patrol in pairs. No one stays alone." My partner was Yaren. Yaren was still trying to joke, but it was clear from his eyes that he was scared too. "Maybe there's a madman living in the desert," he said, "or an Iranian saboteur." But we both felt that wasn't true. We went out on patrol around 01:30 a.m. The moon was almost full. A pale light covered the desert. The wind was blowing gently. Everything seemed normal, but desert nights, sometimes they make you feel like something is wrong, as if invisible eyes are watching you. Yaren suddenly stopped. "Did you hear that?" I stopped too. At first there was nothing. Then I heard the same voice again, that whisper. But this time it was coming from much further away, and it wasn't just one. It was as if many voices were speaking at once. But it was impossible to understand the words, just a muffled, dark murmur. Yaren whispered, "That's not the wind." We reported to the commander via radio, but the radio was strangely making static. The signal kept cutting out. As we continued the patrol, I noticed something. There were tracks on the sand, but these weren't normal footprints. They looked like human feet, but much longer. The toes looked almost twice as long. Yaren leaned down and examined the tracks. "What is this?" The tracks led away from the base into the desert, and then they just ended abruptly, as if that thing had risen into the air. Just then a sound came from behind us, the sound of a rolling stone. We turned quickly. We shone our flashlight in that direction, and at that moment we saw it. About 30 meters away, something was standing. At first glance, I thought it was a human, but then I realized. It was at least 2.5 meters tall. Its body was very thin. Its arms reached down to its knees. Its head was bowed. We couldn't see its face. Yaren raised his weapon. "Hey, who are you?" The thing didn't flinch, it just stood there. Then, with a very slow motion, it raised its head. The flashlight's beam hit its face, and in that moment I felt sick, because that thing's face looked like a human face, but it was wrong. Its eyes were completely black, its mouth was much wider than normal, and its lips looked torn. Yaron fired in panic. The gunshot shattered the silence of the desert, but the bullet didn't hit that thing, because that thing wasn't there anymore. It had vanished in an instant. We both froze. Yaron looked around, trembling. Where did it go? I couldn't answer, because at that moment we heard a voice from behind us, a whisper, but this time it was very clear. It was speaking a language, but I didn't understand it. It sounded like an ancient language. I slowly turned around and I saw that thing. It was standing right behind me. There were maybe 2 meters between us. Its face was now fully visible. Its skin was gray. Its eyes were like pitch-black voids, and its mouth was much larger than a human mouth. That thing looked at me. Then it spoke, but its voice was not a human voice. It was as if many different voices were speaking at the same time. This place belongs to us. I was like stone. Yaron fired again. This time the bullet hit that thing, but nothing happened. It was as if he had fired into smoke. That thing continued to look at us. Then it smiled, and that smile was something non-human. Then it suddenly ran toward the darkness. But its running wasn't normal. It moved as if its body were breaking. It disappeared from sight within a few seconds. We rushed back to the base. We told the commander everything, but he didn't believe us. You're under stress. But that night something else happened. Around 03:00 a.m., screams were heard across the entire base at the same time. A soldier burst out of his tent. Someone called me. Another one shouted, "There's something outside." Everyone took their weapons, but when we went outside, there was no one, just the desert and the wind. But then we heard a laugh from afar. It wasn't a human laugh, deep, muffled, and long. It was as if the desert itself was laughing. And in a moment I understood. When we set up that base, we were in the wrong place. Because that thing, that jinn, was already there. And it was watching us. After night, no one in the base was the same. The soldiers weren't joking anymore. Everyone was quieter. When night fell, a strange tension would fill the tents, because we were all thinking the same thing: that thing will come back. In the morning, the commander lined everyone up. Yaron and I spoke again about the entity we had seen. This time, some of the soldiers began to believe us, because we weren't the only ones. 2 other soldiers said they heard footsteps outside their tent at night. Another said he heard his mother's voice in the dark. The commander got angry. "Stop this nonsense. This is a war, not a ghost story." But even in his eyes, unease was visible. That afternoon, something strange happened. While clearing the base, we found an old bunker door. The door was halfway buried under the sand. It looked as if no one had opened it for years. There was an old, rusty lock on it. The commander said, "This used to be an Iranian military base. It's probably one of the old storehouses." We broke the lock. The door opened with a heavy sound. Cold air rushed out from inside. Outside, the temperature was 35 degrees, but the inside of the bunker was like ice. This was already strange. We entered with flashlights. The tunnel was narrow. The walls were concrete but looked very old. Water was dripping from some parts of the ceiling. The tunnel led downward. It felt as if we were descending deep underground. Yaron said from behind, "Something doesn't feel right here." I felt the same way. The air was strange, heavy, making it hard to breathe. After a few minutes, the tunnel opened into a wide room. In the center of the room, there was something strange. A circular sign drawn on the floor in black, but it wasn't paint. It looked like it was drawn with charcoal or some burnt substance. Inside the circle were symbols. None of us recognized them, but they felt very ancient. Yaron whispered, "Is this something religious?" The commander replied, "Maybe they are old ritual marks." Right at Kogu's moment, we heard a sound behind us, footsteps coming from the tunnel. We all raised our weapons, but no one appeared, yet the sounds continued, as if someone was approaching with very slow steps. Then suddenly it stopped. At the same time, the air in the room changed. The temperature dropped even further. The light from our flashlights began to flicker, and then the symbols inside that circle on the floor moved. At first, I didn't believe my eyes, but they were actually moving, as if they were alive. Suddenly, a muffled sound was heard inside the room, a whisper, but this time we all heard it. The voice came from deep below, as if from under the ground. The words weren't understandable, but there was something in the tone, hatred. The commander shouted, "Everyone out." We started running back through the tunnel. The sounds behind us were growing even stronger. There were hundreds of whispers now, as if hundreds of entities were speaking at once. Halfway through the tunnel, Yaron suddenly stopped. "I saw something," it looked at me. We tried to pull him along, but he kept looking back. Then he suddenly screamed, "It's there." I looked back too. In the darkness of the tunnel, I saw two black eyes, lightless yet watching us, and around those eyes was a tall figure, the same thing we had seen that night. But this time it wasn't alone. There were other shadows behind it. We ran. We burst out of the tunnel and slammed the door shut. Everyone was breathless. The commander locked the door again. No one spoke. We were all thinking the same thing. That thing was not alone. That night the watch system was changed. No one stayed alone anymore. Searchlights were installed everywhere, but even the light didn't calm us. Because at 02:17 a.m. the electricity in the base cut out again. Everywhere was plunged into darkness, and in that moment every soldier heard the same thing. Footsteps inside the base. But these steps weren't like human steps. They were longer, heavier, as if something very tall was walking. The door of one tent slowly opened. A soldier's terrified voice came from inside. "Who's there?" No answer came, just the sound of breathing. Then a scream rose from inside the tent. We ran there, but when we went in, the soldier was gone. Only his bed was torn apart, and there were long black marks on the floor. It looked as if someone had dragged him away. But there were no footprints leading out of the tent door, just sand and silence. At that moment, a sound came from the distance, from the desert, a long, dark laugh, as if Thing was enjoying our fear. After that soldier vanished, no one at the base was calm anymore. No one let go of their weapons. Everyone awaited the fall of night with dread, because we had finally understood. This wasn't just a creature, this was something else, and it was hunting us. Early in the morning, the commander made a decision. We are going to search this base thoroughly. He didn't want to believe that anything paranormal was happening. In his view, the bunker and tunnels were just old military structures. But inside, everyone knew. The symbols we saw in that tunnel were not normal things. We opened the bunker door again. This time, there were more soldiers and stronger lights. As we descended into the tunnel, my heart was beating very fast. It was as if a voice inside me was saying, "Go back." But it was already too late. We reached the room at the end of the tunnel again, and what we saw shocked everyone. The symbols we had seen yesterday were now darker. They looked as if they had been freshly drawn, and in the center of the circle, there was a black stain on the ground, like dried blood. The commander knelt down and examined the marks. "This isn't military," one soldier said. "Maybe it's a religious ritual." But at Kolgu Inu's moment, the Iranian guide among us spoke. His name was Hassan. He had been standing silent for a long time, but now there was fear on his face. "This is something ancient." Everyone looked at him. The commander asked, "What do you mean?" Hassan said in a low voice, "These marks are used to summon jinns." A sudden silence fell over the tunnel. Hassan continued, "There are very old stories in this region about entities that live beneath the desert." Yaron laughed nervously. "Jinns?" But Hassan shook his head. "Yes." Then he pointed to the circle. "This is a confinement circle." The commander frowned. "Confinement?" Hassan nodded. "Yes, this circle was drawn to keep something here." My heart sank. "And now?" Hassan looked at me. Then he said in a very quiet voice, "Now it is free." Right at that moment, a sound was heard inside the tunnel. Footsteps, but they were very heavy, as if something giant was approaching. Everyone raised their weapons. The steps came closer. Then suddenly they stopped. A shadow appeared in the darkness of the tunnel, and that shadow slowly moved toward the light. We saw that thing again, but this time more clearly. It was almost 3 meters tall. Its arms were very long. Its fingers were unusually thin and long. But the most terrifying part was the face. Its face was like a human face, but the skin looked cracked, and the eyes were completely black. The thing looked at us. Then it smiled, and it spoke. But the voice again was not a human voice. It was as if dozens of voices were speaking at the same time. I have been asleep for a long time. The cold in the tunnel intensified. The thing tilted its head to the side. Then it said, "You woke me up." The commander shouted, "Open fire." Everyone fired at the same time. The tunnel filled with the sound of bullets, but something incredible happened. The bullets passed right through that entity's body. It was as if we were firing into smoke. The thing slowly walked toward us. One soldier started to run in fear, but a second later the thing reached out its hand. Its fingers stretched to an inhuman length. It grabbed the soldier by the throat, and it lifted him into the air. The soldier struggled. He screamed, but the entity just looked at him. Then, there was a snapping sound. The soldier's neck broke. The body fell to the ground. Everyone panicked. We started running out of the tunnel, and from behind, the entity's laughter could be heard. A very deep and dark laugh. It was as if it contained the rage of hundreds of years. When I got out of the tunnel, I looked back, and I saw it. It was standing at the entrance of the tunnel, but this time it wasn't alone. There were other shadows behind it. They were slowly emerging from the darkness, and they were all looking at us. In that moment, Hassan whispered, "There are many of them." I asked, "Who?" Hassan said, "Jinns." Then he added, "And we are in their territory." That night, a total nightmare began at the base, because when darkness fell, there wasn't just one entity outside. Dozens of shadows were moving across the desert, and all of them were closing in on us. When we looked out at the desert that night, we only saw one thing: shadows. There were dozens of them. It was as if the darkness itself was moving. The beams of the searchlight struck the desert. But those shadows were not afraid of the light. Slowly, they moved toward the base. The commander shouted, "Everyone take your positions." We all grabbed our weapons. But deep down, everyone knew the same thing. This was not a normal battle. This was not war. This was something else. As the shadows approached the base, their forms became clearer. They resembled human shapes, but their bodies were very long. Their arms reached down to the ground, and their eyes were pitch black. Suddenly, all the searchlights went out at once. The base was plunged into total darkness. And in that moment, whispers were heard from every direction, as if hundreds of entities were speaking at the same time. But not a single word could be understood, just voices filled with hatred. Then that entity appeared again, the great jinn we had seen in the tunnel. This time, he was standing in the middle of the base. The moonlight fell upon his face, and he was looking at us, as if he were studying us. He spoke. His voice was like hundreds of voices again. "This land is ours." The wind grew stronger. Dust rose into the air. The entity spoke again. "Humans should not be here." The commander shouted at him, "This is a military zone." The entity tilted his head to the side. Then he said in a quiet voice, "This land existed before humans." Suddenly, the surrounding shadows began to move. They rushed toward the base. The commander shouted, "Fire!" Gunshots filled the desert, but the bullets had no effect on most of them. Some shadows would vanish, but others kept coming. A soldier screamed. A shadow brought him to the ground. Another started to run, but the darkness swallowed him. Within minutes, the base turned into a nightmare. Screams, gunshots, and the laughter of that jinn. Yaron looked at me. "We have to get out of here." We ran to the armored vehicle at the back of the base. Behind us, shadows were engulfing everything. The commander and the other soldiers were fighting, but most of them were already gone. We started the vehicle. The engine roared. Yaron hit the gas. The vehicle moved toward the desert. When I looked back, I saw the base. The searchlights had come back on, but in their light, dozens of shadows were roaming. And in the middle of the base stood that great entity. He was looking at us. I could feel it even from a distance. Then he slowly raised his hand, and he whispered. I couldn't hear his voice, but I felt his words. "This is not over yet." We drove until morning. Finally, we reached another military base. We told the command about the incident, but they didn't believe us. They said we had simply experienced trauma. A few days later, news arrived. The base where we had been stationed had completely vanished, as if nothing had ever been there. There was no tunnel. There was no bunker. Just empty desert. But I know one thing, because sometimes when I sleep at night, I hear that whisper again, right by my ear. Very quiet, a very dark voice, and it always says the same thing. We are still here.